Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's edition of Horse's Mouth Live, the Extraordinary Advisor Show, where, as always, I have great information for you for every aspect of your life, especially your business. And I am glad to be back. It's been a while since we've done one of these shows, and we have a great one for you. I'm really excited. We're going to be talking about really modern marketing and how to have a framework for success. Things have been changing a lot and so quickly that I am excited to be sharing ways with our expert guest, Marie Swift, who I'll formally introduce in a moment, to talk about ways you can look at marketing your practice in ways maybe you haven't thought about. Before we went live on the show, we were talking about how important it is to be flexible and relevant because things are changing so quickly. And you know that expression, if you always do what you always have done, you always get what you always got. I recently had one of my mentors say, well, no, that doesn't even work anymore. If you've always done what you've always done, you're not going to get what you've always got because things are changing so quickly. So I am so excited to introduce our guest today, Marie Swift. You probably know of her if you're in the industry, but for those of you that want a refresher or maybe are not familiar with Marie, she's the president and CEO of Impact Communications, which is a full-service PR and marketing communication firm that really solely works with people in the financial services industry. She's written all over the place, including Barron's, MarketWatch, Forbes, Wealth Management, Napa Advisor, so many different places, including Horse's Mouth. And she's been quoted in all sorts of industry publications and also Wall Street Journal, Investment Advisor magazine. She also speaks beautifully at a lot of different conferences. You've probably seen her at meetings before, but she's going to be in 2023 speaking at the Investment News Women Advisors Summit in Chicago. So Marie, hopefully we can connect when you're in town. And also Morningstar's Investment Conference. Highly recognized. She's got all sorts of credentials, but let's dig in. So what I'm really curious about, Marie, and I've seen this with advisors I've talked to or meetings that I've been at, that some advisors really struggle and others thrive when it comes to attracting and retaining clients. Like, why do you think that is?
You know, we saw that. First of all, thanks for having me. But we did see that come to play in real time when we were all under duress during that horrible March 2020, where we were realizing our livelihoods were at risk. Our clients were scared. We were scared. All of that fight or flight, the fear factors were running high. And during that time period, I thought, well, I'm going to take care of my family and myself and be more resilient, but I'm going to do a study to see what advisors are experiencing because they're on the front lines working with their clients, about money and health and family. And what I learned in my study, which, by the way, it's in the resources that you can find at the end of this session, is that advisors who were thriving during that high peak of stress were taking a keen focus on their clients' whole life, their whole well-being, if you will. They were focusing on their own resilience and their own well-being. And they practiced this thing called, I know, I care. I know, I care. So you're not just a number to me. I actually care about you as a human being, not just about your money, but about everything that's going on. Some of them wrote in essays to me in my little study, and they said, I'm sending care packages of soup and biscuits from an online delivery service because it helps my clients feel more at ease. And then we can have better conversations about their money and what the markets are doing in this COVID pandemic. Or I'm sending boxes of toilet paper and Lysol because I can find it somehow, or masks or whatever was needed. I'm going to do that because it's the right thing to do, whether I send it or I drop it off on their door and I stand from afar and talk to them. So this whole thing of I know, knowing is almost like table stakes. You need to do all that CFP stuff or that financial advisor stuff, but it's that EQ, that empathy, that ability to really connect with clients that I think help those through the pandemic double their businesses or get 50% increase in net new assets because clients were giving them more share of wallet or they were referring friends and family. So I think that just to kind of bottom line it here, the focus on priorities and what matters and drawing closer to your clients and being just highly credible, highly relevant in their lives, that's what is making a difference in this age of endless Zoom meetings and podcasts and the barrage of email and social media.
And I would say other reasons that's important besides people want to feel cared for and they'll be more loyal to their advisors when they know their advisor cares more about, them as a person than just the AUM. It's also what can set an advisor apart from a robo-advisor, some online platform, because to me, that's the only thing that can set people apart now with all AI and chat GPT and all these things that are out there. With your deep knowledge, like how have you seen advisors also using this to go above, as you called it, table stakes, besides just knowing they know what they're doing?
Yeah. Well, so there are some frameworks that I've developed over the years that work through thick and thin. And they're as good today as they were 15 or 20 years ago. And I keep going back and thinking, like, have the fundamentals changed? But at the end of the day, it's all about people and relationships. We're in a trust-based business. So I'm a student of like what works and what makes us credible. And one of the people I've been studying is Robert Cialdini. Do you know him, Ellen?
Yes,
He's written and spoken about influence for so many years. And I just, want to share a little bit of what he talks about in influence because, we know what we're doing as professionals. I hope we all do. I hope all of our viewers and listeners do. But it's beyond that EQ, go to that EQ and influencing people to do what's right for them, as well as to help us with our business objectives. So I want to share a little bit about what Robert said. Here are the factors of why people want to do business with us. Well, reciprocity, commitment, social proof, and some of that is what they see online or what they hear from their friends. Authority, part of that would be being credible and being in the media, and some things we could talk about there with credibility, marketing, just that authority. They like you, so you need to resonate with them so that they like you and you like them, because that's where the best business happens, and you're not miserable that way. Scarcity, like, if you're available to anybody and everybody, you're not very scarce. So people are going to want to work with you if you're a little bit hard to get to and, it's referral only, or there's some kind of a bar or a threshold. And then unity, how are you seeing the world and how do you unify your thinking with your clients? Almost like creating a tribe of people who like to be together and they have a similar world view. Not that you wouldn't work with people who have a slightly different worldview, but I just think that that's the best way to get into a position of influence. I want to share one more thing and then I'll throw it back to you, Ellen. The New York Times does a study and it's about why people share. And so think about this. Why do people share about you as an advisor? Or why do people share about or share your social media content? So it's basically because they see the value in what you're bringing. It's slightly entertaining sometimes. It's not too stuffy. It's a way for them to define themselves to others, and that's why they share about you or they share your content. It helps them to grow and nourish their relationship. Notice that it's not about the advisor. It's not about helping the advisor. It's about their own sense of worth and meaning in the world. Self-fulfillment. And then lastly, just to get the word out about causes and concerns and content that they care about, because that's how it helps them have that meaning. So I'll stop there, but I think that social proof, that sharing, why people share, and how we influence people to do what's right and to work with us, those are important thoughts to consider right now.
Great. I do want to come to sharing and digital marketing, but before we get there, Maria, I do love that book, Influence. For those of you that haven't read it, it's a big, thick book. Sometimes it's helpful to go like on YouTube and get the summary before you dig in so that you don't get stuck on like chapter 3. There's a lot of really interesting studies there, but it might be helpful for us to talk about things like defining a little bit more reciprocity or commitment, like how advisors might be able to be a little bit more deliberate on that or focused to build influence with their clients.
Yeah, so reciprocity, sometimes it feels contrived, like if you do this for me, I do that for you. But I think if you take an interest in your clients' lives, that reciprocity happens naturally. So, delight and surprise is something that we have heard over the years. I think that that works as a way to show that you are being reciprocal. You're paying attention to them. You know what they like. If they're a wine aficionado, or if they're a foodie, or if they're into sports, you're actually being reciprocal in caring for them by sending something that surprises and delights them out of the blue, not just obligatory at the holidays. So that's how I like to think about reciprocity. Maybe just calling somebody out of the blue or sending them a good morning text message. Hey, I woke up thinking about you, and I hope that the birds are chirping in your neighborhood. They are in mine too. So I think that reciprocity of care, that's where people want to return the favor to you, just kind of because it's karma. It's, the way we are wired as human beings when we like and trust and people are caring for us. How would you think about reciprocity, Ellen? I'm curious because I know you're the prosperity and abundance coach.
Well, what I would add to that is for advisors to also be thinking about your centers of influence with this. And old school is you scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. So first of all, my view on is what goes around comes around, but not always from the same person, right? So if I help you, Marie, I'm not like, oh, you better help me. I might have Mary Beth sending me business. It just is how it works. But there was a really interesting study that they talked about in that book, Influence, where researchers sent out hundreds of holiday cards just to people out of the phone book. They didn't know them. And many of those people sent cards back because they felt like they had to. So my friend Deborah Poneman talks about building a reserve of, now I'm forgetting her really great term for this, but it's when you help someone enough, like your relationship capital, right? So if I'm helping you because I sincerely want to, not because I'm looking for something back, then if I have an ask down the road, there's no way you're not going to say yes for it. And you may be thinking of me. So that's how I would expand on what you just said to also, in addition to your clients, how you might be able to think about reciprocity with centers of influence as well.
Yeah, I call that the goodwill bank. If you build up enough goodwill in a bank with people before you ask for anything, when you're ready to ask, you don't even really need to ask. They kind of know, like, oh, would you like me to introduce you? Or how could I be helpful with this mission or objective? It just happens. And it's a beautiful way to live life and to do business too.
Yeah. And then just touching on the commitment thing, because I think this is helpful for advisors. People want to keep their commitments. And so one of the ways you can do that is if you're working with a client, to really get them to agree to be doing certain things, like, okay, when are you going to do this by? And when should I follow up? Because people want to be seen as someone who keeps their commitments. I don't know if you have anything else you want to add on that.
Well, I'm big on commitments. I don't always, I'm not always the best at keeping them, but I'm big on commitments and doing what I say. And so I like to surround myself with people who keep me accountable. So whether that's a coach or a business partner or a spouse, or sometimes even your kids, make commitments and let other people know what you're up to, because you're going to find that they may not give you the hard knock across the head, but just knowing that they know that you gave your word and your commitments, I think that that's important. And clients certainly, we promise a lot to them. And so we need to deliver and keep our commitments there.
I just want to share something you did with me that helped me keep my commitment in a really good way. So you set this up where I felt like in a good way, I had to keep my commitment. So Marie and I are doing a webinar for NAPFA in a couple of weeks. And I had a meeting reminder pop up today that I owed her my slides, and not just that I owed her my slides, but she said, see below, and everything I needed to include in there was in the meeting notice. So I think you did a beautiful thing, not only supporting me to keep my commitments, but also kind of setting the bar like, hey, I'm expecting this, but in the nicest way possible. So I'm sure you do that with the people that you work with on a regular basis to make sure that they're keeping their commitments. So I want to jump into this ways of improving digital communication. I know for me personally with my business, sometimes it can feel really overwhelming to be thinking about how there's so much. I'm working with my clients or I'm getting ready for a presentation, and yet I'm supposed to be on social media or sending out my newsletters or posting my blogs. Like, what are ways that you can see advisors improving their ability and their effectiveness with digital communication?
Yeah. So the first thing to remember is people are overwhelmed with information right now. So making sure that you would want to receive that if you were in their shoes. Don't just send information for information's sake and clutter up the airwaves. Remember that people have the attention of a goldfish. So that's about 3 seconds. So we call that the goldfish syndrome. So especially with digital, keep your messages hyper relevant and maybe short. Think about the frequency so you're not overwhelming people. I know that we're all barraged with email, and social media gives us the opportunity to follow or unfollow causes and people and companies that we think are providing value. So keep it short, keep it relevant. Also, just think about the tone. There's this new term that's going around called pro-personal. And to me, it's the best of your professional self and your personal self, where your authenticity is so magnetic that people like you, they trust you, they're drawn to you because they can tell you're not a phony. If you're trying to be something that you're not, people go, well, I can't quite put my finger on it, but what is it about that? So now with digital, we can show that more personal side of ourselves. For me, I'm a new grandma. And I worried like, ooh, are people going to think I'm old or irrelevant? Am I retiring? Well, no, I'm a grandma. I've got a 2-year-old. I love having him over for sleepovers and showing us at the park. I'm careful about how much personal I put into my social media or into my conversations, but I think people like when they can know you as more of a whole person. So that blending of professional, pro, and personal in building out your public persona, your best public self, is so important right now. So the tone of that would filter into your digital, wouldn't it? And so I know, Ellen, you're really good at this, just being who you are and wearing colors that make you feel good. I mean, I laughed. We laughed together when I said, look, I'm wearing turquoise, you're wearing raspberry. We must be feeling the spring weather. And instead of a stuffy old suit, go ahead and be yourself so that people are drawn to you, who you really are.
Can you explain more about what you mean by hyper relevant?
Hyper relevant. So that would be being in tune with who your best clients are and your best centers of influence are, and also your staff. How are you going to be more relevant in their life instead of, like we were talking about before, just creating more noise in the world, whether it's social media or conversations or email? How can we be more helpful and more relevant? And when we do that by thinking through, okay, life triggers are happening. I can see that you're going through a divorce, or maybe you didn't tell me, but I have software. There's artificial intelligence now that will tell you when your clients may be going through through a life event, either because it's an age and stage in life, or the software can see, the AI, the artificial intelligence can see. It looks like from social media, what we can gather is so-and-so is going through a divorce, or so-and-so is has some kind of a lump sum event, maybe an inheritance. There are real tools now that help us to see, almost like with X-ray vision. It might feel a little creepy, but this is the reality we live in. And so that we can be more hyper relevant. And I think the trick there is not to be too on the nose, right? Like if you're going to send somebody a message and you found out through artificial intelligence that you think they might be going through a sad time in their life, how do you approach them, especially if you don't already have a personal or a business relationship? So my company is actually purchasing lead lists now of people who the AI thinks are going through a life trigger, and we're trying to send hyper relevant messaging to these prospective clients in order to get them to see that the advisory firm could be a resource for them as they go through an inheritance, as they go through a move to a new community, as they go through a sale of a business. So this is a smarter way to sync up your prospecting is to use some of today's AI and then think smart about your messaging to be hyper relevant to draw more people in.
I had no idea that there was AI that could do that. It is super helpful. You could be really supportive and slightly creepy. It was like the first time I would be online looking for something, and all of a sudden the ads started showing up for that same thing on the side. I didn't realize why that was happening. Now I don't even pay attention, but it was like, is my computer listening to me talk to my daughter about a prom dress? Is that why they're all showing up on the side? But really interesting, and how cool that you're doing that. And I would say that another way to look at it is, instead of being creepy, would be like how much of service you're going to be to people if they're really in a time of need, that you're able to provide them with something really supportive and helpful. So when advisors are thinking about the content they put out, I know there's 4 C's of content marketing, and I would be grateful if you could run through those with us, Marie.
Sure thing. So content is important. And, it's a word that means being hyper relevant, doesn't it? Creating information and edutainment meaning educational and maybe a little entertaining, something that's fun and interesting and not boring. But so the 5 C's of content, I think, are really important to consider, because as busy professionals, we all want to push the easy button, don't we? Right? Like, we're running the business, we're meeting with clients. Oh, I got to do this content now. So the easy button would be to buy the content. So you can buy content from someone who creates it, custom content that is created for advisors and maybe compliance checked. And then sometimes you can customize it or quasi customize it. I call that canned content. So that's the first C in the 4 C's of content marketing. So that's okay if you need a little bit of that to get going or to keep your cadence up. But if we go up the spectrum of what's more powerful, but maybe a little harder to do, is curated. So canned and then curated. So curated content would be content that ideally you find and it resonates with you and you think it'll be hyper relevant to your audience. So you comment on that and you share it in email or social media or in conversations. So there's canned and there's curated. Sometimes there are services that will curate content for you. That's pushing the easy button again. But I say that there's a risk there, because what if your competitors are in there? What if there's something that you don't believe in? And what if you don't comment on that? That actually diminishes your reputation, doesn't it? So if we go up the harder spectrum, so custom content, that's the 3rd C in the 4 C's of custom or of content. So custom is something that's uniquely yours that you create or someone helps you create that you can own. And typically you're going to publish that on your blog, or maybe it's a medium like Medium or LinkedIn where you can post that. It's a third-party site, but you still own that content. You're not giving it away to anybody else. The top of the heap, though, in my opinion, is that 4th C. So we've got canned, curated, custom, and at the top it's credibility. Credibility content. So what is that? That's a blend of curated, but you're the expert. So let's say you get quoted in the New York Times. You should curate that piece and push it out as credibility content, because it creates that halo effect. It helps people know that you are an authority, that they can have confidence in you because you're good enough to be quoted in the New York Times or whatever it is. Maybe it's the local newspaper or an authoritative blog or somebody else's third-party outlet. Like for me today, being here with you, Ellen, adds to my credibility because you chose me to be on this program for Horse's Mouth. So of course I would want to do that, because that's being hyper relevant for my audience. And I'm not here to get business. I'm here to stay relevant.
Yeah, and that goes back to Dr. Cialdini's, one of his 7 things of influence, which is authority. It's like this third party thing. Years ago, when I had my practice, I used to write for the local paper. It was called the Pioneer Press, and I'd write an article on money I don't know if I did every week, but say every month. And I got clients out of that because it felt like it was a third-party endorsement. They would never say they were endorsing me, but kind of showing up either as an author or like a columnist or someone else quoting you makes you seem authoritative. So if someone is quoted like in the Wall Street Journal or their local paper, especially with all the information that's out there now, how do you recommend to your clients that they then leverage that or repurpose it so that it's not lost?
Yeah, that's so important. And leveraging is so easy to do today. So let's say you've been quoted in the local newspaper or the New York Times, whatever it is, you want to get it on your website. Have a newsroom or some kind of a news page in the news and get a little summary. Ellen Rogin was in the news talking about this, and the publication is this, and here's the date. And then a little paragraph that makes that hyper relevant and easy for people to digest, and then link over to that article or that radio show segment or whatever it is, because you're going to get a cross-linking effect that adds to not just your own authority for people who are seeing it, but the search engine spiders, right? Because we all know that Google and Bing and Yahoo, they crawl and they say, how relevant is Ellen or Marie for these keywords? Well, if you're in a highly relevant publication, chances are the New York Times is going to have more SEO, search engine optimization and authority to those Google spiders or those Yahoo spiders than Marie Swift's or Ellen's own website. So that cross-linking, that backlinking, if you can get a link over to their platform, ideally, they've also got a link over to your platform. You can ask, you can't always demand, but sometimes they do it just naturally because they're also getting that SEO, that search engine optimization. And I call that spiderweb marketing. So your website is the hub. All these satellites, these media mentions, these directories, whatever you've got, the satellites floating around, cross-linking into your hub and you cross-linking out from your hub to them. So I don't even remember your original question, but I hope there was something in there that answered it.
Yeah, no, that was it. And it made me think about when Picture Your Prosperity came out, we actually got in Oprah magazine, which was cool, but they gave the quote from me that wasn't my quote. They didn't fact check it. It was something on, I don't even remember, but it had nothing to do with my content. And at first I, was like, oh my God, this is wrong, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you know what? Who cares? I just have on my website that I've been in Oprah magazine because that's kind of true. Yeah. I was in Oprah magazine, and I'm not saying to be disingenuous with it, but what I and the other thing that I've done is when someone quotes me in like their blog or whatever, especially if it's always would do this, but then I repost that on social media with the columnist's name because it helps them too. That's that reciprocity thing. I'm wanting to highlight what they've done. So.
That is so smart. Now I remember we were going down the how to leverage once you've been in the press, whether it's your article that you wrote, it carries your byline, or whether you're quoted in somebody's article. So getting it on your website and doing all that spiderweb cross-linking, but the social media and that reciprocity, you're right. These journalists have to drive traffic to their articles and to their websites, their publication websites. And I've been thanked by journalists. It's like, wow, thank you for helping me socialize this. As a PR team, we do that for all our clients. We have our clients do it, or we do it for our clients. So the journalist is seeing more traffic, and their bosses are noticing because they sometimes get paid based on some of those metrics, like who's reading, how much traffic are we getting? Because guess what? They have advertisers on that page, and the advertisers want eyeballs on that content.
Right. Beautiful. So Marie, will you just mention this, the upcoming web sessions that are you're coordinating, hosting for NAPFA that are coming up, because it might be of interest. And what I didn't realize till you mentioned this, that it's not just for NAPFA members that they can have access to this.
Yeah. So, of course, you know this, Ellen, but you and I are actually tag teaming on something in February and March, and it's for NAPFA, the National Association of Personal Financial Advisors. That's what it stands for, NAPFA. But even those who are not NAPFA members are welcome to join. It's free for NAPFA members, and there's a small fee for all others. But there's so much value to be participating in these web sessions. So Ellen and I are doing something February, and it's February 23rd at 3 Eastern. And it's going to be about engaging your clients in a way that makes a difference, moving them from just being simply satisfied to being raving fans. So we're calling it Wowing with Service. And of course, Ellen knows all about how to wow with service. So I invited Ellen to be my partner on this 1-hour webinar that NAPFA is hosting for us. And then What's cool about this is there was a session last month that talked all about surveys and how to get feedback from clients. We're going to actually be taking the topic of that webinar plus what Ellen and I are talking about in February. And then in March, same time, we're going to be doing like an interactive coaching session where Ellen and I are going to say, okay, did you do some of the homework we asked you to do, webinar participants? Because we'd like to hear from you. What is your plan to move your clients from simply satisfied to raving fans? How are you planning to attract your best clients and to do your best work? And you can find about that at napa.org. And then there's a long sub URL. I think, oh, there it is on screen. Thank you very much to the Horse's Mouth producer. So you can click on over and learn about that there.
Great. Thank you. And Marie, if people want to learn about you, your PR, your marketing services, hiring you to come speak at one of their conferences, where should they go?
Well, you can Google me. I'm the most popular Marie Swift on the World Wide Web. I'm not the poet or the makeup artist, but I'm giving them a run for the money on the SEO. But marieswift.com is my blog. It's the easiest thing to remember. And there's a ton of free resources there. I'm always interviewing interesting folks. And then my company website is impactcommunications.org.
Thank you. And thank you so much for this. It's such an important conversation. Advisors, they're not growing their practice, it's shrinking. Even if you feel like you're at the level you want to be, we always are looking for ways to upscale that, be more hyper relevant, which is a term I learned today, and also pro personal, which is something I also didn't know before today. It'll go on my what did I learn today list. And I'm so grateful that you would share your expertise with us. So generous, Marie. Thank you.
My pleasure.
And for those of you out there that would like to learn more about me, you can go to ellenrogin.com. That's ELLENROGIN.com. And if you go to ellenrogin.com/horse's mouth, you can download my special report, which is what extraordinary advisors know that others don't. So thank you so much. We're glad to be back. I'm glad you're here. If you have recommendations for me for guests or topics that you think would be helpful, just let me know. You can find me on social media, on LinkedIn. I hang out there a lot. And remember to be great and create great every single day.